and, I've been a journalist since I've been a grown-up and writing books almost that long. And when I got married, I was kind of old. I was on the geriatric side for most of America, which isn't that old for other people, but I was 35, and I was the last of my friends to get married. So I was kind of like the Jennifer Aniston of my friend group. Like, I was happy with my life, but everyone else was sad for me.
Aww.
And then when I got engaged to this great guy who showed up out of nowhere, I realized I had no idea how to be a wife or how to be married or what you're supposed to do to be in a couple. And I wrote this book called How to Be Married. I still don't know if I love the title, but that was the title, where I asked women all over the world, how the hell do I do this? And so it was very fancy French women in polygamous tribes in Kenya and Tanzania, Orthodox Jewish women in Jerusalem, and compiled this into one book where we just talked about marriage that wasn't total BS. I mean, marriage off of Instagram. So there's no hashtag couple goals or, sweetly, fakely post date nights. It's like the nitty gritty of what this is really like. And I'd like to think of it as a feminist's guide to figuring out how to be a wife.
So that brings me to my burning question. How do you be married? How do you be a spouse in this country?
I still have no clue. That's the problem. It was really funny on my book tour last year. People kept billing me as a relationship expert, and I'm like, oh no. Anyone who calls themselves a relationship expert probably doesn't know anything, and they're definitely divorced. I'm just a journalist who was asking the questions, and I have a lot of answers, but I don't have all of the answers. The one thing that I found out that was really interesting is that we have way too many expectations around marriage in this country. And it comes out of the fact that we're kind of schizophrenic about what marriage even means now, because it's changed so much from what it's meant for all of human history, which was essentially just a legal way for a man to get a female slave. It was transactional in nature. So romantic, right? But it's true. It was a father essentially selling his daughter to a husband, and the woman would serve the man, and that's what marriage has been, and that's what those roles have been defined as for all of human history. Still, in a lot of parts of the world, that's exactly what still happens, and until maybe 20 years ago. And so now that we have marriages where people are actually in love, where people are equal partners, and in a lot of my friends' marriages, the woman actually makes more money than the man, we don't know how we're supposed to act or how we're supposed to operate, and we have all of these crazy expectations. The biggest problem with American marriage, I learned, is that we think that our spouse is our everything, that they're our best friend, the greatest sex we've ever had, our soulmate, our tennis partner, our running buddy, our therapist, the person who tells us our butt looks cute in our new jeans, even when it doesn't. And one person can't be everything. And when that person fails to be everything, we get pissed and we think that our marriage isn't working. And that's the story that I hear over and over from women.
Yeah, I do think we kind of normalize this idea that when you marry, you are marrying the person who's going to be everything in your life. And so the role of your girlfriends or your buddies or your work wife or whatever, all of those roles kind of become, I don't want to say erased, but diminished, because now you have a husband and that person's supposed to be your end all be all. And yeah, it's not true. And it's also not realistic.
No, and it's not healthy. And pop culture does nothing but promote that idea. I mean, The Bachelor is still one of the highest rated shows on network television. And even Sex and the City, which billed itself as being this feminist phenomenon, 3 of the 4 characters on that show ended up married by the end of the series. And frankly, Samantha was the only one who was allowed to not be married because she was, quote unquote, the slut. Like, we're still a culture that says marriage is going to fix everything. All you need is a husband and all your problems are going to go away.
Yeah, and to go back to your Sex and the City example, even at the end of the series, they kind of seem to be flirting with the idea that her and who's the really hot guy she was dating?
Jarrett. Smith Jarrett?
Yeah,
right?
they kind of teased the idea that she had found her, quote, one and only. And I remember thinking, oh, brother, like nobody on this show can get past the idea that everybody has this one perfect person for them. And when they link up with them, poof, all their problems are solved.
Yeah, exactly. And it was such a bummer for a show that claimed it was so female forward and such a feminist show that all of us, the answer to everything on that show was a man has to love you.
That whole pop culture thing, I didn't realize how much for me until I started working on this show. And we talk about that a lot, about how the audience of this show has been really like transformative and helpful for me as a person. But somebody wrote in a comment once, like, we need to stop defining success as only this one thing, as in you get married and you have the 2 kids and you get the house and you have the pet, and you have the job, and that is success and that is the only thing. Because we see that over and over again in pop culture. If you don't have that, then something is missing from your life.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I wrote in my book, How to Be Married, that I got more likes on my Facebook status when I got engaged than I did when I published a book or a second book or a third book. Like, everyone thought that this was the biggest thing I'd ever done in my entire life, the most important thing, compared to all of these professional achievements that I'd had the 35 years prior to just meeting some dude.
That's amazing that you even say that. I have a lot of friends who sort of work as digital strategists and social media managers, and they've actually done studies that when you say things like, if you made a Facebook post that was like, I'm engaged in a huge book project I want to tell you about.
Yeah,
the algorithm will actually privilege that post, and more people will see it because they think, oh, she just got engaged. Huge news. So even Mark Zuckerberg is controlling how we think about marriage.
I know. All I want to do is trick Facebook on a daily basis. So I'm like, look at my new baby. This book, Charlotte Walsh Likes to Win. Buy it now on Amazon.
That's awesome.
But it has been really interesting just hearing the stories. And so now that I am married, and now that I want to create this marriage of equals, for which there aren't role models out there for it, because we're the first generation, or essentially the second and third generation that are really doing this. My mom certainly was not in a marriage of equals. I know that my grandmother wasn't. So now that I'm doing this, I mean, it's really just trial and error. And that's why the stories of how other people make marriage work, like the nitty gritty, the good, the bad, the really, really ugly, I find that so helpful. Because especially going back to social media, all we see on social media are people looking perfect and looking filtered, and that all of their relationships are super happy. And my friends who post the most with their husbands or boyfriends on social media are the ones that I know are probably getting divorced.
So they've actually done studies. According to a study recently published by the Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin, couples who are always bragging about their significant other on social media, the hubby, the hubster, all of that, well, they're actually